This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत, झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत FM.
बजेगा भारत, झूमेगा भारत.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Storytellers Cafe, the #1 storytelling podcast show on Bharat FM, a Cincinnati-based radio station that was set up 2 years back, exactly in March 2020. Thank you for making this commitment every week. And I thank each and every one of you who come back very sincerely to listen, learn, and enjoy. Thank you for choosing to listen to Storytellers Cafe. I enjoy these episodes as much as you do, as I get to sit down with fellow friends, storytellers, and share with you the wealth of insights, wisdom, and life experiences my guests share. Today's guest is someone I have been wanting to invite for quite some time. And finally, we have him online here in our studios. As you all know, friends, the month of March, Storytellers Cafe is celebrating International Women's Day, Break the Bias. That's the theme this year. As I said before, India is not lacking not only in women storytellers, but also male storytellers, amazing, talented, professional storytellers. And we are so proud to showcase these achievers. We started off the month of March with Reshma Krishnamurthy, who runs an organization called Mums and Stories, and we listened to some wonderful inspirational stories. And then it was Rohini Vij from Kanpur. Rohini had specially written a story on the International Women's Day theme, Break the Bias. We got to listen to that story from Rohini. And last week we had Lakshmi Manian from Seattle, United States, who very succinctly put forth to us that breaking the bias is standing your ground, and not to be unfazed, but to carry on, be steadfast in your perseverance, and then prove to everyone that you are no less, if not more. As we know, the International Women's Day theme is all about how we can make a gender equal world, a world free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination, a world that is diverse, equitable, and inclusive, a world where difference is valued and celebrated. Together, we can forge not only women's equality, but everyone's equality. Collectively, we can break the bias. So let me introduce Kapil Pandey. As I said, I've been looking forward to host him, and finally we have him online. Kapil Pandey discovered his passion for storytelling at the grand old age of 30, when he and his 2-year-old daughter met a monster called Gruffalo in the deep, dark woods. He is a children's writer and a drama and education practitioner, and believes in the power of drama to create safe and reflective learning spaces. He is the president of the Kutumb Foundation, a not for profit that uses drama and football. What a fabulous combination to engage with language and holistic learning. For a living, Kapil runs VDIS that uses the design thinking approach to design, wayfinding, and experiential graphics for institutional and retail clients. We'll talk to him more about this. Kapil has been training primary and middle school teachers across India in the art of using drama as a tool for learning. He has traveled the country with his stories and can be found telling stories to children and adults in literature festivals, bastis, bookstores, schools, and parks. He sees his foray into the world of stories as a quest to ask complex questions and as an attempt to know himself a little better. When not telling stories, Kapil runs marathons. Wow. Oh, yes, he sometimes goes to work. That's what Kapil says. Let's get Kapil into our studios right now and let's engage in some conversations with Kapil. Welcome to Storytellers Cafe, Kapil.
Thank you so much, Ushaji. It's a total pleasure. Thank you so much.
The pleasure is all mine. As you know, that this month was a specially curated event on Storytellers Cafe about International Women's Day. And we had three very powerful women tell their stories and how they have overcome bias. But then I thought, we are not going to complain about men here, and we need to get the man's perspective as well as to how one breaks the bias, because the bias exists not only in our world, in all our worlds. So, how do we? And especially in the storytelling community, which is predominantly women in India. I mean, one can name, in your fingers, the male storytellers. Maybe I'm ignorant about it, but I can just kind of count them in my fingers. So, welcome to Storytellers Cafe for this special edition. Kapil, what is your story?
Ah, uh, once again, thank you so much for having me over. It's a pleasure. And I'm so glad that you've called me on this platform when you're discussing the idea of breaking the bias. Um, so my story, well, I think my story kind of starts. I've been a city boy. I do think that I hail from Lucknow, although I haven't stayed there. I lived only in Bombay and Delhi. I spent my early years in Bombay, where I stayed until I think the middle school, and then did my senior school and college from Delhi. Um, and I think my world of stories as a child, I think, was essentially Doordarshan serials and Hindi film songs and comics like Champak and Chacha Chaudhary, and then graduated to Tinkle. And I guess spent a lot of time reading a lot of Amar Chitra Katha in my school library. And then when I came to Delhi, I guess I sort of started reading slightly more complex books, a lot of detective books, Sherlock Holmes, a lot of P.G. Woodhouse, a lot of Tintins. So I think that was really my world of stories then, and I don't know whether that's what got me hooked. I think what really got me hooked was when I really entered college, and during college when I started doing theater. Um, what happened to me, I guess, then was that theater kind of gave me this agency to close read text, or to create distance between the reader and the text, or to start looking at alternative perspectives. I don't think books gave me that as much as theater did. Perhaps theater enabled or empowered me to be able to do that when I read books. Something that a kind of agency that school education, I think, failed to offer to me, at least. And and that's also the time when I started feeling that this entire paradigm of education, someone needed to really turn it upside down. Someone really needed to uh, lead the paradigm from the lens of the arts, if they really wanted to make a meaningful impact towards the idea of learning. And soon after college, I think 3 years after college, I was working in Bombay. I went back to Bombay to do my work, and then came back, and then Kutumb happened, where we started working with children who lived in slums of Delhi, some village schools around Delhi, and Kutumb also became a means to try out, to make a sincere attempt towards the kind of paradigm that at least I was thinking of. And me and my friends, I think we got together and theater and music and sports and other forms of art became the primary intervention, and English and Hindi and science and maths and EVS, they kind of became the one might call the co-curricular. They became the supporting interventions or the sidekicks. We'd we'd quite literally enter into the story, into the big lie, to get a first-hand feel of the context of the characters of the story, and a response to that within the story would give rise to newer layers of the story for us to navigate. And I think that whole act was very, it was full of learning. And I think the good part was it sort of broke down hierarchies. I don't think I felt like being a teacher in the class, because we were all navigating together in role within the big lie, within the framework of the context that the story had set for ourselves. And that navigation also kind of brought in elements of English grammar, Hindi, Vyakhya, a bit of maths here and there, a bit of social sciences. I remember to learn English poems, we'd first set it to music, sing it, have fun with it, and then see what it reminds us of. And then after that, start working backwards to unpack all the layers of meanings the poem brings with it. So, and I think storytelling in its pure form really happened to me a couple of years after I became a father. Of course, you mentioned my daughter was 2 years old. And I found myself using the same elements of drama and elements of music while reading to my then 2-year-old daughter. She's 14 now. And I think I then just followed through on the same when she went to school, her nursery, her KG, with the rest of her classmates. And that kind of became a bit of a feature with the school kind of inviting me for their language weeks and art weeks and camps, etc. And that, I think that followed through with a number of lit fests and other schools. But of course, going back to Kutumb is not a space where I could really earn a living out of. So when we started Kutumb, I also set up what at that point of time I would call it the financial support mechanism to me and Kutumb, which is called VDIS. It also kind of has had a journey of a kind. But today what we do is we kind of understand human behavior, user experiences in spaces, and design elements like signage, like wayfinding, like what is called experiential graphic design, a part of interiors. And we design that for a number of institutional clients now, today. And that's where I get my mehentana out of. Yeah, that's my story, I guess. Ushaji, I can't hear you. You're muted. That, by the way, that is the most used statement in the last 2 years. Aap mute pe hain. Sorry, carry on.
Sorry, because I didn't want any extraneous sounds coming from here. But there's nobody here, so there is absolute silence except for the whirring of the air conditioner. Kapil, what an interesting journey and career path. You've kind of blended both, one to sustain your passion and one to continue and what you are, your drama, your storytelling, and your passion. So that's beautiful blending of the two. Kapil, can you tell us more about you? You hail from Delhi. Presently, you're living in Delhi. I know there is a very vibrant storytelling scene in Delhi. Is there a guild or an association in Delhi that you are part of? And how is that? Because our viewers are from around the world. As you know, that Storytellers Cafe has made footprints right from Australia, Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, India, Dubai, Qatar, United Kingdom, and the United States. And we have listeners from all over Paris, Vancouver, from distant Saudi Arabia, from all over the world. So could you tell us, I'm sure our viewers are interested in knowing about the storytelling scene in Delhi.
So I think as a storyteller, I kind of live on the margins. I kind of also perhaps prefer that to a great extent. it helps me kind of have a distant viewpoint. Uh, but what I've been part of in the last 2 years, I think, when just as roughly around the time when COVID struck, is this beautiful tribe of people called the Delhi Storytellers Tribe. It's I don't know what to call it. I can't really call it an organization. My reason to join this tribe was I think there's a lot of inertia in me. I think there's a lot of laziness in me, uh, which someone needs to keep sort of poking at. And I think my initial reason to join Delhi Storytellers Tribe, or to be a part of what was being created then, was to just ensure that I am telling enough stories, and I don't intend to be very prolific, but I'm just doing enough of it. There is enough research that's happening. I'm reading enough. Because I don more than a couple of hats, I didn't want a situation where I'm not sort of out there telling stories. But in the last couple of years, what has happened is that this guild or this tribe has also become a very safe space for us to talk about multiple sort of issues pertaining to the idea of Mehentana, also the idea of does the is I mean, because we also know that the commerce of storytelling is a big challenge. Uh, some people also believe that is it that because traditionally, and the bias is that, and as you mentioned, that the idea of being with children and being there for children and taking care of children, that is a space that women have held uh, for I mean for all these years. Is it also the reason that there is a sense of pay gap in this space? So conversations around that, conversations around the purposefulness of telling a story. Why are we really telling stories? And then of course to engage with people who do not tell stories. So I think it has kind of segued into many sort of such areas. We keep organizing these story swaps, and especially look out for people who have not told stories, who find it sort of difficult to be out there, especially this camera. Even though you might feel that you're sitting alone here, is a fairly threatening space to be in. It's fairly overwhelming in its own way. There's a lot of silence around you. You don't know how people are responding. There's no bounce. So given all that, I think we've done well to kind of spread this whole sense of joy, and to kind of raise questions around storytelling, the goods of it, the problems associated with it as well, I guess, to some extent, the magic of it, the powerfulness of it, everything. So, yeah, that's what we do here at DST.
Thank you, Kapil, for that very uh, detailed description of your tribe in Delhi. Moving on, Kapil, I was listening to a podcast where our wonderful storyteller, Dr. Sudha Murthy, was saying that learn the language to learn the culture of the land. One of the biases that we faced, or when I started 1996, was to tell stories in English. Though I speak Tamil, I did not tell till 2012 or 13 to be comfortable to speak in my mother tongue, which I know to read and write. Somehow the colonial construct stayed, and then English is the language, spoken language, so we have to tell. But it's wonderful today that storytellers are speaking in their mother tongue, sharing stories. And I know for one that you're a wonderful storyteller who recounts beautiful stories in Hindi. And it's such a beautiful language to listen to. And we've shared a few platforms where we have told stories and where you shared it. It could be a tandem English Hindi or just pure Hindi. So, can you tell us about, what is your favorite medium? Which do you enjoy most?
Well, I think in Hindi, and I think Hindi also has a lot of bias associated with it. I think there's a lot of problems as well. I guess the point is that people have tried to kind of box languages. I mean, apart from the colonial aspect of English, I think the credit that goes to English also is that it has been more accepting of other languages. It has included other languages. A lot of Hindi vocabulary exists in the English language. I think Hindi has kind of struggled to do that. Hindi has, over the years, tried to define, and a great part of that comes from the realm of religion, where, I mean, to me, if you say that, do you speak Hindi, or do you speak Urdu, or do you speak Hindustani, I can't make the difference. To me, all of that is Hindi, all of that is Urdu, all of that is Hindustani. But I think the fact that people historically have tried to box these languages, that if you're speaking Urdu, there are influences that come from Arabic or Persian, and they're speaking Hindi, there have to be influences from Sanskrit. And then the idea to purify it, I think that itself is pure Hindi itself is an oxymoron, I think. That concept doesn't exist to me. So I think in that language that I call Hindi or Hindivi or Hindustani. And I like to kind of use that language, but I also feel that a great part of English, and I take you to some of the examples that some of my children who live in slums in Delhi, I mean, they do not understand the word kathin, kathinai, samasya. They understand the word problem. For them, problem is a Hindi word. And I don't see why we can't use problem in our Hindi vocabulary. So, and if Hindi was more accepting of other languages, I think from a literature perspective as well, it might have blossomed more than it perhaps has in all these years. So perhaps some part of me also tries to push that idea of speaking a language which includes English and Hindi and Sanskrit and Urdu and Persian, I guess, and tries to make sort of create a language that is ours. I mean, at least belongs to this region. Yeah.
Very well said, Kapil. Very well. There is a kind of freedom when you speak in your mother tongue, because I realized that it was liberating, or like you said, to bring in Tamil, into the English and tell a story. It's also, and then language, storytelling is beyond the language barrier. If you're truly a good listener, you will understand what the story is about.
Totally.
So that's the beauty of storytelling, which kind of overcomes beyond language. And whether, even if it's a sign language, if you're truly a good listener and you watch a story being told, you will understand. It has a language of its own, which is beyond words, I feel. So Kapil, could you tell us about the bias that you have overcome or faced, and how did you kind of circumvent it?
I mean, you mean as a storyteller?
As a storyteller in your profession, because you run a design thinking company, and of course, as a storyteller, as a male storyteller in a female dominated scene in India, do you think female storytellers are dominating the scene in India?
Oh yeah, totally. You can say that again. And kudos to them for that.
Yes.
But
we,
I
we
don't
are
think.
finally
Sorry.
we are finally getting to voice our opinion, express ourselves. Go on,
No, I
go
don't
on.
think I've faced any bias though, Ushaji. I think perhaps because women are more accepting of having men around them than the other way around. But I think also because I think a space that is led by art, I think by default turns into a safe space for people identifying with any gender or any kind of identity. And I think that's the magic of art. I mean, which is why, I mean, whether it's Kutumb or in the place where I VDIS, the business I run, I think the role of the arts is very strong. We like to use arts as a way to lead everything. And I think that's the reason that this space has not. I've not seen bias on that count. I have definitely, and as I mentioned earlier to you, I've seen this idea of pay gap. I've seen the idea of, and I think some of that definitely comes from the fact that professions which are dominant by women, not all of them, and I think progressively this is also reducing, and that's great stuff. But the challenge of women sort of dealing with this idea of pay gap, whether it's the film industry or it's employment in the corporate world. That's also true of the storytelling world, I think. So I guess we all need to do our bits to push the envelope on that count. But I do think that this whole idea of breaking bias is arguably the most important part of a storyteller's job description. And I think it's, to me, the month of breaking the bias should only work as a reminder to us storytellers that it's part of our JD. Not so much breaking biases, as I think that's something each one of us has to figure out ourselves, but the idea of asking difficult questions, critiquing the norm, reimagining the imagined, showing the mirror, sharing alternate perspectives, these have to be intrinsic to a storyteller's job profile. As storytellers, we often find ourselves saying that, this story really stuck, this really worked for me, this rang a bell, this resonated. And I think just that act of reading between the lines, breaking up the story to find those layers that made the story stick, that itself is such a powerful act for the storyteller to know himself, herself a little better, to know what affects him or her, bothers him or her. And to me, it's really crucial that this layer finds its way into the story one way or the other. So many of us go back to Ramayana. It's a story that is told so often, and as a child, I remember this whole idea of the scene where Shurpanakha gets kind of violated. It bothered me as a child, I think, but I don't think I had the vocabulary or the language to be able to articulate it. And so the point I'm trying to make is that if a storyteller decides to tell the story of Ramayana, it's a story that one can go out and read on the internet, watch multiple films on, watch mini series on, read multiple books on, Kindle on. Why are we telling that story? And I think somewhere this whole idea of how these multiple layers of that story affected us need to come out, because those are the layers that help us ask questions, and those are the questions that make even a story as simple as Ramayana a little complex. Those questions, those critiquing the norm acts by the storyteller, help the listener engage with more questions that they may ask of themselves, of the norm, and hopefully at some point of time are able to find the agency to break some bias or the other that they have lived with. So I think breaking the bias and storytelling they kind of go hand in hand.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, Kapil. Talking of Surpanaka, that's a story that I'm presently working with, to present it for a platform about for International Storytelling Day that's happening next week. Because Surpanaka, was she really a demoness, or was she truly wronged? Because it was she was a very intrinsic cog in the wheel, actually, and she orchestrated this war between Rama and Ravana, her
Ravan.
brother,
Yeah.
to take revenge against him. And then finally, how she meets Sita, and then all their differences are put aside, and she regains that happiness, of just being. So it's like you said, we question, we break the bias, we've heard something, and we peel the layers and go in and see. Kapil, before we go, we would love to listen to a story from you. I know this is a very sensitive, tricky question, but then I dare to ask you this. Now, storytellers, especially Indian storytellers, um, I do not know the scene today, even today, maybe there is a bias which exists when Indians have to perform in an international scene. You see, we have to prove ourselves. um, it's like it's true of anything. Suppose I want to perform for ICCR and I represent my country, of course I have to be at a certain standard. Or for a Sangeeta Natak Academy, if there is a storytelling, then I have to be there. I'm not one of those famous baul singers, or like Dushyant Sridhar, or the well named storytellers who are the traditional tellers. But in the international scene, which is dominated by the English and the Americans and the Europeans, whereas Asians still find it difficult to make a mark in the international scene. Not that they haven't. I mean, I have performed in quite a few festivals as well, but I still feel there is a bias. And like Lakshmi, my previous guest, said, you persevere. You show with your work, with your performance, that you can perform even better than the stories that are told. So, can you throw a light? Do you have anything on that? I know I'm putting you in a spot, but this is purely because there are so many Indian storytellers. You know that Storytellers Cafe has only showcased Indian storytellers from around the world, because we need a platform to show our talent. So, what do you think about this?
Oh, this is definitely very complex. I mean, you you talked about the problems of colonization. I'm sure the colonists that were still see us as the third world, as the people, as the gulam log. That's definitely part of the deal. But I think for me, and I also know that we take a lot of inspiration from people across the world uh, who've been telling stories. Many of them perhaps are people with white skin, uh, but I think somewhere something that I mentioned a while back. I think what is really crucial for each and every storyteller is to find what affects her or him in the story that he or she is about to perform. And I think that that bit makes the story more personal, more powerful. It also brings contexts that, because somehow also we often do is that while performing a story, we also end up distancing ourselves, the artist, so to speak, from the story. And when we distance ourselves from the story, we often look at some of the better places, some of the people who are doing great in the world of storytelling, and maybe there's a level of rubbing off, there's a level of, I mean, for lack of better word, imitation. This whole thing of trying to really sort of go through the layers of the story. Why is it really striking a chord? Why is it resonating with me? And once you really arrive at that, to to really figure out how can I really, this is how this particular point is affecting me, and how can I really put it out there? How can I put my context out there within the realm of the story, within the framework of the story? I think this whole idea of also persevering with that, to make stories more personal, to take our self, our person along with the story when we go and present the story. I think those may be some of the ways to be out there, whether it's India or the international circuit, to really present our case finally. I mean, there's some element of activism that is definitely happening when we are telling a story.
Yes.
And I think, yeah, to kind of keep at it.
Yeah, because stories are cultural activism. There is
Yeah.
activism, live activism happening. Absolutely. And thank you, Kapil. I think you've said it beautifully. I think one bias which I feel very common is, though English is not our spoken language, to be very fluent and expressive in that is a challenge. Is something that one has to work towards when you are on an international platform.
Sure.
Unlike Arabic or other storytellers and their language, they do tell their stories and that's translated, but they are few and far between, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for that wonderfspotlight on this bias, which is there about storytelling in the international arena. Coming back to stories, Kapil, what do you have for us? Because I'm sure our listeners would enjoy, and believe you me, my friends, Kapil is a wonderful storyteller. He immerses himself in the story and takes the audience into his story. So I would say sit back and enjoy the story.
Thank you, Usha. Well, I think, I mean, much of our conversation has been around the idea of asking questions, breaking norms, critiquing the what is given, and I think this, to me, I couldn't think of a better person than this particular story. Is her story, and I think she's one of the foremost people in our country to have really gone out, broken biases, broken traditions, asked questions, very difficult and complex questions. I'm going to tell you her story. Sadras Navichas Lama Katibuz Daimyo Mitdi Amin takin tu inzan shamay zuchum brahma gargats Zuchum Brahma Gargats ये जो मेरा शरीर है, इसे मैं एक महीन कच्चे धागे से उस पार ले जाने की कोशिश कर रही हूं। उस मौला, उस भगवान, उस शिव को पाने की कोशिश कर रही हूं। कठिन है, बहुत कठिन है, क्योंकि बगैर उसकी मदद के ये काम करना कुछ ऐसा है जैसे कच्ची मिट्टी के बर्तन में पानी भरना। क्योंकि कच्ची मिट्टी के बर्तन में आप अगर पानी भरेंगे तो पानी तो निकलेगा, क्योंकि मिट्टी तो टूटेगी। तो मुश्किल है, पर मैं कोशिश जरूर करती रहूंगी, क्योंकि एक शिद्दत से मुझे उस पार जाना है। एक जुनून, एक तलब है उस पार जाने की। जूछुम ब्रह्मान गरगत्स। और ऐसी शिद्दत, ऐसी तलब उस पार जाने की, अपने खुदा, अपने ईश्वर, अपने शिव को पाने की केवल एक में थी। और जो नज्म आपने अभी सुनी उसी की है। इसे कश्मीरी में ललवाक कहते हैं। वाक यानी वाक्य, सेइंग्स, अटरेंसेस, जो कहा गया हो। और लल यानी लल्ला, लल्लेश्वरी, लल अरीफा, लल देद। तो कौन थी लल देद? क्यों अपने वक्त या उससे पहले और बाद के वक्त के संतों, कवियों, शायरों की तरह पूरी दुनिया में मशहूर नहीं है लल देद? शायद इसीलिए कि हम मर्द आसानी से किसी औरत को कभी मशहूर होने नहीं देते, या शायद इसलिए कि मशहूर होना इस इनकलाबी शिव भक्त, इस बागी योगिनी के लिए बिल्कुल ही महत्वहीन था, निरर्थक था। मशहूर होना तो हम और आप जैसे दुनिया जहान की आपाधापी में फंसे गैर अहम लोगों के लिए जरूरी है। लगभग 700 साल पहले श्रीनगर से नजदीक पंद्रेथन गांव में पैदा हुई, सिद्धमोल नामक गुरु से तालीम ली और कुछ ही सालों में शिव और योग शिक्षा में इतनी निपुण हो गई कि अपने गुरु को भी मात दे दी। पर 12 साल की हुई थी कि लल्ला का ब्याह, शादी पंपोर में रहने वाले नीका भट्ट से करवा दिया गया। और जैसे आज भी कई लड़कियों का शादी के बाद नाम बदल दिया जाता है या उन्हें अपने शौहर के परिवार का नाम अपने नाम के आगे जोड़ना पड़ जाता है, वैसे ही ससुराल वालों ने लल्ला का नाम पद्मावती रख दिया। अब आप इसे 700 साल पहले एक 12 साल की लड़की की मजाल कह लीजिए या उसकी जागरूकता या बेदारी का सबक कह लीजिए, ललदेद ने ये नाम अपनाया नहीं, वो लल्ला ही रही। कहा जाता है कि लल्ला की नाफरमानी ना मानने की, किसी की बात ना मानना, ये देख के उसके पति ने गुरु सिद्धमोल से प्रार्थना की कि वो ललदेद को ऐसी उचित शिक्षा दें कि वो सांसारिकता और पत्नी धर्म में रुचि लेने लगे। तो जाहिर है सिद्धमोल उनके घर आए और इससे पहले की मुद्दे की बात होती, सिद्धमोल और ललदेद के शौहर में एक चर्चा, एक बहस छिड़ गई। बहस का विषय था कि सभी प्रकाशों में कौन सा प्रकाश सबसे श्रेष्ठ है, सभी तीर्थों में कौन सा तीर्थ, सभी परिजनों यानी कि परिवार वालों में कौन सा परिजन, और सभी सुखद वस्तुओं में कौन सी वस्तु सबसे श्रेष्ठ है। तो ललदेद के शौहर को लगा कि यह अच्छा मौका है अपनी बात रखने का। वो बोला कि सूर्य प्रकाश से बढ़कर कोई प्रकाश नहीं, गंगा के समान कोई तीर्थ नहीं, भाई से बढ़कर कोई परिजन नहीं, और पत्नी के समान कोई सुखद वस्तु नहीं। देख लीजिए, 700 साल पुराना मर्द और आज का मर्द, कोई बदलाव नहीं हुआ है हमें। खैर, तो सिद्धमोल ने जवाब दिया कि ना, नेत्र प्रकाश से बढ़कर कोई प्रकाश नहीं, घुटनों यानी कि टू बी सेल्फ रिलायंट के समान कोई तीर्थ नहीं, जेब के बराबर कोई परिजन नहीं, और शारीरिक स्वस्थता के समान और कोई सुखद वस्तु नहीं। This we can kind of appreciate because of all these 2 years of COVID. जैसे हम ज्यादातर आदमियों को लगता है ना कि इंटेलेक्चुअल स्पेसेस और इंटेलेक्चुअल बातचीत हमारे जोन्स हैं और औरतों के नहीं, वैसे ही ललदेद के शौहर को लगा कि यहाँ पे बात खत्म हो गई। लेकिन ललदेद चुप थोड़ी रहने वाली थी, तो उसने भी अपनी बात आगे रखी। उसने कहा कि आत्मज्ञान से बढ़कर कोई प्रकाश नहीं, जिज्ञासा यानी क्यूरियोसिटी से के समान कोई तीर्थ नहीं, और ईश्वर के समान कोई परिजन या सुखद वस्तु नहीं। दोनों लाजवाब रह गए। इसके बाद लल्ला से सांसारिकता और पत्नी धर्म निभाने के बारे में कम से कम उसके शौहर ने तो कोई बात नहीं की। लेकिन फिर नंबर आता है मदर इन लॉ यानी सास का। उनके बिना तो इस देश में हर कहानी अधूरी है जनाब। आफ्टर ऑल, रसोड़े में और कोई होना हो, सासू मां तो जरूर थी। और मुझे अक्सर लगता है कि जिसके साथ जुल्म होता है, जिस पे सितम ढाया जाता है, वही अक्सर जुल्मों सितम को जारी रखने, चलाए रखने की वजह भी बन जाता है। सास जो हैं वो ज्यादातर इसी श्रेणी में आती है। तो सास को भी ललदेद की नाफरमानी बर्दाश्त नहीं हुई, तो जो जुल्म उन्होंने लल्ला पे ढाया वो खाने के हवाले से था। ललदेद की भोजन की थाली में चावल ढंग से परसने की जगह एक पत्थर रख के उस पे चावल का लेप लगा देती, ताकि देखने में ऐसा लगे कि बहुत सारा चावल का पहाड़ परोसा गया है। ललदेद के हिस्से में जितना चावल भी आता वो खा लेती और फिर अपनी तश्तरी और पत्थर दोनों को धो के रख देती। ललदेद ने जो इस तजुर्बे पे कहा वो आज भी जब किसी कश्मीरी को भोजन में ज्यादा नमक, खिसका या कंकड़ आ जाए तो वो भी आपको ये मिलता पाएगा कि काठ मर्तन या हुंड लल नीलवट सल नीसा, यानी चाहे बकरा कटे या भेड़, लल्ला के यानी अपने हिस्से में तो पत्थर ही आने वाले हैं। कोई कश्मीरी ये बात माने या ना माने, पर हर कश्मीरी में, उसकी कश्मीरियत में, उसकी जमहूरियत, उसकी इंसानियत में रची बसी है ललदत। और होता क्या है ना, जब कोई इंसान किसी कौम या समुदाय की पहचान में इस कदर बस जाता है तो वो वहां की लोक शैली, फोकलोर, मिथ्स और लेजेंड्स का भी एक बड़ा अहम हिस्सा बन जाता है। अगला वाक्य भी कुछ वैसा ही है। ललदत का रोज का काम था नहाने धोने के बाद मंदिर जाना और फिर जहलम से पानी भर के लाना। सास रसोड़े से अपने बेटे को भड़का तो रही थी, तो एक दिन तैश में आकर ललदत के पति ने उसके सर पे रखी पानी से भरी हुई मटकी फोड़ डाली। मटकी तो टूट गई, लेकिन मटकी पे जो पानी भरा था वो वैसे का वैसा ललदत के सर पर जमा रह गया। ललदत ने पानी अलग अलग बर्तनों में उड़ेल दिया और कहा जाता है कि मटके के टुकड़े जहां गिरे वहां एक तालाब पैदा हो गया। अब तो वो तालाब सूख गया है, लेकिन आज भी उस जगह को ललदत के नाम पर लल त्राग बुलाया जाता है। इस हादसे के बाद ललदत ने कहा कि अब बहुत हुआ सर मैडम, हो गए तुम शौहर और हुआ करो तुम सास, तुम दोनों जाओ अपने रास्ते, हम चले अपने रास्ते। तो 20-22 साल की उम्र में ललदत ने अपना ससुराल छोड़ दिया और गांव गांव, जंगल जंगल भटकने के बाद उसकी मुलाकात कश्मीरी शैवाइट संत सिद्ध श्रीकांत से हुई, जिनकी वो शागिर्द भी बनी। और सिद्ध श्रीकांत से सीखना ललदत के आध्यात्मिक सफर का शायद सबसे अहम हिस्सा था। वो कहती है कि माई गुरु सेड जस्ट वन थिंग, टर्न विदिन, टर्न विदिन। This was Lalla's soul education, to learn to leap inside herself. I rejected every false belief, immersed myself in my inner voice alone, and ultimately I saw myself looking deep into myself. And therefore, naked, I began to dance. ललदत योगी बन गई, अपने सारे कपड़े उतार बेबाक निर्वस्त्र होकर गाने और नाचने लगी। वो कैसी दिखेगी, लोग क्या कहेंगे, इन सब बातों की उसे रत्ती भर भी परवाह नहीं रही। और यहीं से शुरुआत हुई ललवाक की। और माना जाता है कि कश्मीरी जबान और कश्मीरी अदब या लिटरेचर में ललवाक का बुनियादी तौर पर राब्ता है। ये ललवाक ललदत की व्यक्तिगत जिंदगी के बारे में तो नहीं है, लेकिन फिर भी बड़े गहरे तौर पर निजी है, पर्सनल है, शायद इसीलिए आलमी है, यूनिवर्सल है। डांस लल्ला with nothing on but air. Sing lalla, wearing the sky. Look at this glowing day. What clothes could be so beautiful or sacred? सोशल प्रिटेंस और प्रेजुडिस से निजात पाने की बात कर रही है ललित। कहाँ मुमकिन है ये सब सोशल मीडिया के जमाने में, है ना। ये ललवाक हमें बड़े गहरे सफर पर ले जाते हैं, इंसान की दशा से लेकर सांसारिक मोह के बंधन से आजादी तक, ललदत की शिव की तलाश से लेकर आखिरकार उस सत्य को पा जाने तक जो स्वतंत्र कर देता है, रिहाई दिला देता है। The foundation of your life is but quicksand. Your attachments illusory. Hoard all that you wish. You will have to leave it all behind. और लल्ला कोई भजन कीर्तन या मंत्र जपने की बात नहीं करती है। लल्ला के लिए उसके ललवाक ही शिव सूक्त हैं, शिव की आराधना है। Whatever I did became the worship of the Lord. Whatever word I uttered became mantra. What this body of mine experienced became Shiv sadhana, illumining my path to Param Shiv. ललवाक अपने समय में यानी ललित के वक्त में नहीं लिखे गए। सोचिए कितनी कितनी ताकत, कितनी कुव्वत रही होगी ललित के बोलों में कि लोगों ने इन्हें सुना और इस कदर अपने मन, अपनी रूह में बसा लिया कि पीढ़ी दर पीढ़ी इन्हें गुनगुनाती रही, भजती रही, और आज भी हर कश्मीरी इन्हें अपने रोम रोम में बसाए हुए है। ललवाक में बगावत है उन सभी ढांचों के खिलाफ जो इंसानियत की रूह पे हमला करते हैं, शोषण करते हैं। ललदेद निंदा कर रही है और सवाल पूछ रही है उन लोगों से जो भेदभाव की कुरीतियों को चलाए रखना चाहते हैं। जहां ललवाक एक रिवाज बन चुके हैं, वहीं ये ललवाक रिवाजों पे अड़े रहने पे सवाल भी उठाते हैं, उनका बहिष्कार करते हैं। देखिए, लगता है ना कि मैं आजकल की ही बात कर रहा हूं। शायद इसीलिए ललदेद आज भी इतनी रेलेवेंट है। ललदेद की ये बगावत बेमिसाल थी। उसने अपने ललवाक के जरिए कौमी, धार्मिक, सामाजिक, राजनैतिक इन सभी ढांचों पर जोरदार हमले किए, सभी ढांचों की कुरीतियों पर सवाल उठाए। लिहाजा वही हुआ जो आज भी होता है। जो उस समय के रिवायतों, रीति रिवाजों के कर्ता धर्ता थे, उन्होंने ललदेद को पागल करार कर दिया। Let them mock at me and call me names. If a true devotee of Shiva I be, I shall not feel distressed nor hurt. Can a few ashes a mirror befoul? ललदेद की बगावत आध्यात्म के रहनुमाओं से भी थी, जो कि संस्कृत के ज्ञानी थे और अपने को ज्ञान और इल्म का मुहाफिज समझते थे। ललदेद का सफर उस जबान में था जो सड़क पे चलने वाला हर कश्मीरी बोलता था। इसीलिए ललवाक हर कश्मीरी तक पहुंच गए, फिर चाहे वो किसी भी धर्म, किसी भी जाति के क्यों ना हो। कश्मीर के सांस्कृतिक इतिहास का पहला इनकलाब लेके आई थी ललदेद। शिव भक्त थी, शिव में लीन थी, पर उसी शिव भक्त के रीति रिवाजों के सख्त खिलाफ थी। मंदिर वहीं बनाने वालों को और मूर्ति पूजा करने वालों को ललदेद कहती कि द आइडल इज बट स्टोन, द टेम्पल इज बट स्टोन, फ्रॉम टॉप टू बॉटम ऑल इज बट स्टोन, whom will you worship, O stubborn पंडित। जानवरों को बलि चढ़ाने की प्रथा पे उसका कहना था, it covers your shame, saves you from cold, its food and drink, mere water and grass. Who counsel you, O Brahmin, to slaughter a living sheep as a sacrifice unto a lifeless stone? O fool, right action does not lie in fasting and ceremonial rites. Right action does not lie in providing for bodily comfort and ease. In contemplation for the self alone is right action. और अपने ललवाक के जरिए ललदेद जो सारी इनकलाबी बातें कर रही थी, उसका मकसद सिर्फ एक था, अपने शिव की खोज। I recited the mantras till my palate wore thin. I turned the prayer bead till my fingers bruised. Yet I could do no justice to you, O Shiva, for the realization of oneness with you eluded me. All I did was think about the body, never once about what lies beyond. I am no different from you, never did this dawn on me. Shed deceit, caprice, and untruth, I tell myself. Know that Shiva alone resides in one and all. Why distinguish people then by their food, drink, and customs? देखिए कितनी कंटेम्प्रेरी बातें कर रही थी ललदेद। 700 साल हो गए, हम फिर भी नहीं समझ पाए। इन्हीं खान पान और रिवाजों के नाम पे हम आज भी एक दूसरे को काटने मारने पे तुले हुए हैं। और जिस शिव को पूछती थी, उस शिव को खोजने की, उसे पाने की उसकी तलब देखिए. I pestled my heart in love's mortar, roasted it and ate it up. I kept my cool, but you can bet I wasn't sure whether I'd live or die. I hacked my way through 6 forests until the moon woke inside me. The sky's breath sang through me, dried up my body's substance. I roasted my heart in passion's fire and found pure consciousness. I found Shiva. और शिव को पा जाना उसके लिए तन मन हार जाना नहीं है, सब न्यौछावर कर देना भी नहीं है. एक किस्म की कुव्वत, एक किस्म की शक्ति है शिव को पा लेने में लल देद के लिए. इसीलिए वो कहती भी है, शिव, you and I are no different. You've got 6 senses, I've got 6 senses too. The difference is that you, the blue-throated one, are the lord and master of your senses, whereas I am led astray by mine. I have no control over my senses. And if I had, I would be you. तो ये थी लल देद, लल्ला, लल्लेश्वरी, ललरीफा, जो कि अपने ललवाक के जरिए आज भी हर कश्मीरी में बेबाक निर्वस्त्र होकर गा रही है, नाच रही है. कहते हैं कि लल्ला मरी नहीं, बस एक रोज पानी में तब्दील हो गई और अपने शिव में मिल जाने की इससे बेहतर तरकीब और हो भी कह सकती है कि उसी गंगा का जल बन जाए जो कि शिव की जटा में सदैव कल कल बहा करता है. Let go the sacred tantra rites. Only the mantra sound remains. And when the mantra sound departs, only Chit is left behind. And then, lo and behold, the Chit itself is gone. And there is nothing left behind. The void merges in the void. ये मुझे कुछ कुछ उस सूफी पंछी की याद दिलाता है, उस चिड़िया की याद दिलाता है जिसे डाल डाल उड़ने के बाद आखिरकार भोर के वक्त वो सुनहरी डाल मिल गई जिससे अब वो उड़ेगी नहीं, क्योंकि वो जानती है कि इस डाल पे बैठ जाना ही उस खुदा, उस भगवान, उस शिव में मिल जाने के समान है. क्योंकि उस शिव में मिल जाने की उड़ान उड़ के नहीं भरी जाती. कत्ल भी ऐसा हुआ कि पंछी मर के माला मार. कत्ल भी ऐसा हुआ कि पंछी कत्ल भी ऐसा हुआ कि पंछी मर के माला मार. अल्लाह मेरे चिड़ी बाज ने ऐसा फेंका जाल. कतरा कतरा आसमान है, कतरा कतरा आसमान है, बूझी असल उड़ान. Wear the robe of wisdom. Brand Lalla's word on your heart. Lose yourself in the soul's light. You too shall be free. Thank you.
Thank you, Kapil. What a lyrical, spellbound, binding. Absolutely, everything stood still. Actually, one shouldn't speak, absorb the story. What a beautiful, beautiful story. And you explained about Jivatma, Paramatma, everything, all beautiful story. I really enjoyed it, as did our listeners and viewers. Beautiful. I
Thank
think
you so much.
after this, I don't think we need to say anything more.
Totally. You can say that again.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, with that, friends, we come to the end of this session, this special session in the month of March with a fantastic finale performance by Kapil Pandey. And we're very happy to host Kapil. What a beautiful, beautiful evening, Kapil. It's lovely. And the evening air is kind of standing still. It's like everyone has come to listen to this beautiful Kashmiri story. You can follow Kapil on his social handles. We'll be putting it up. Please do tune in and listen to this episode. If you missed it, you can go to the archives on YouTube as well as on Facebook, Bharat FM page, and listen to it. Please share and do drop in your comments on the Facebook page or on YouTube live chat. We would love to hear from you. And it's always a pleasure to know where you're listening from, which country, and where are you, and tell us a little bit about yourself. So, Kapilji, thank you so much for this wonderful, wonderful session. And is there any, I don't think there is anything, but if you want to leave any parting words with, then the stage is yours.
No, I'm good. I think this is a fairly, in its own way, a fairly heavy story for me as well. But thank you so much for having me over, Ushaji. It was such a pleasure talking to you. And thank you for those wonderful questions. I'm sure I'm going to think about them. I'm going to keep thinking about them as life goes on. So thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for having me over once again.
Thank you. Indeed, I'm so proud that India has such diverse, such powerful, fantastic storytellers. And it's time to celebrate our own. And it gives me great pleasure to host storytellers on this platform and showcase them. Thank you so much. And friends out there, I'll see you again, perhaps not next week, but in the month of April with a scientist and stories. So let's look forward to that. Stay tuned. Keep watching this space, and we will keep you informed. Thank you so much, Kapil. Have a great evening, friends in India, and a great day across the world. Thank you.
This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.